everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Talks. I am your host, the Hermit Tarot. In today's episode, we've got some juicy topics to cover. I'm so excited. And before we get into it, I will explain the costume and everything. Although the explanation is just going to make you weak because it isn't really an explanation at all. But as you know, if you've been watching me for a little while, before we even get started on the podcast, the topics and the things that we need to talk about, we need to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are gathered upon today. Today's podcast is especially special because it's filmed at a very special place, and it is filmed on Gimoy Wallabara Yadinji land. I had to double check because we are so close to Kuku Yalanji, but we're not quite there. We're still in Yadinji land. And this episode, it will be the first episode that is filmed in my new house that I've been talking about for a while now. I was very hesitant to talk about it. Basically, it's been like a 2.5 month process of getting into this house. I checked my memories, and my first meeting or inspection was way back in March. So we've been waiting. I'm filming this episode on June 1st. I'm not too sure when you're going to see it, probably in about a week or so. But yeah, it's been a whole journey, and it feels incredibly special to be able to put a hole in the wall, which is what that is. That was the first thing that I've nailed in the walls in years, because I've just been a renter my whole life. My family, my mother and my father have never owned property, so we used to have to put holes in the wall to hang our photos, and then we'd have to put spack filler, plaster over it. Sometimes we'd have to pay the real estate to plaster over it, and then other times one would be like, no, we're just not allowed to put anything on the walls. So I don't even have any proper photographs anymore. Some of my photos are 10 years old. So it's crazy weird. And I don't know, I'm just trying to get used to being a homeowner in a positive sense too. Those who have been listening for a while, you know that I have a lot of Capricorn placements, and that makes me very on edge at times. I take my responsibilities very seriously. And the first instance of, the first reality of becoming a homeowner, it just felt like a huge responsibility. It felt like it was going to be something that, especially the mortgage with the economy, and then let alone looking after something and making sure that it gains equity and value, and that it doesn't just turn to shit, for lack of a better word. So I took the responsibility way too seriously. It's taken me a whole couple of weeks to adjust and see it as more of a blessing, and doing lots of grounding along the way has been really helpful. I talk about that a lot, but I probably haven't talked about it enough recently. One of the quickest ways to help change my attitude, because gratitude is an attitude, is grounding myself in the moment. And that means I'm not just trying to blindly ignore everything that's going wrong. It means that I literally just give myself a quiet space to be present and to acknowledge everything that's happening at that given moment, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, Clint Eastwood style, and I let myself feel. And if that's a negative feeling at first, I let that feeling come, and then I let that feeling go. Very similar to what we do in meditation. You just let it come and you let it go, because the longer you try to deny yourself that feeling, for me personally, the worse that feeling gets, the heavier it gets, and the more it's harder to ignore, to the point where I feel like you end up building up a lot of subconscious or untapped resentment or bitterness or fear, or you might have this sort of response to a circumstance and you don't know why. Why did I automatically shut that down? Why did I say no to that? Why do I have anxiety around this? For me, as someone that deals with anxiety, when I don't ground myself enough and let myself feel so that I can stay in tune with the reality of the situation in a positive way as well as the negative way, I end up getting very anxious, and my nerves are very on edge, because I'm just there's so much going on and the tension just ends up building. So grounding is a beautiful exercise, and it doesn't have to be laborious. It's actually one of the most natural things you can do for yourself. It's helpful if you have a natural source to ground on. With this house, I just walked through the house barefoot and let my feet touch the little stone tiles, so that felt really nice. And then I walked around in the backyard and let my feet sink into the grass, which felt really nice. But obviously you can ground yourself in the shower as well, which is a good place to go if you need to cry, because it just washes all the tears away, all the snot away. It's one of the things that is best to do with as little restraints as possible. So taking off your shoes, taking off any restrictive jewelry or clothing can be helpful as well. I love grounding. I rate grounding. Definitely try it. Definitely do it. If you're someone that does do it, but you haven't been doing it enough, this could be your reminder. So other than that, what else has been going on? We are going to be traveling very soon, which should incite some interesting content, to say the least. I'm pretty excited to see what we can come up with between myself and Xander Digital, who's behind the cameras again today, obviously. The traveling process, I don't even think we need to talk about the process. It's been for me, it's felt like it's been in the background. Like, it feels like it's something that, because of the house and because this house has been a 2.5, nearly 3-month process, I haven't really been able to think about it. But I can say that we will be going to Japan, which will be very, very fun. I'm hoping to do some pretty cool stuff and see some cool things and film an episode in a cool location, as long as it's not disrespectful. That's the other thing. I got to look into that, see where we can film and how we can do it so that it's not disrespectful to the culture and the people as well. But more about this room. So I feel like I'm jumping from topic to topic, but actually I was supposed to say we're filming in this location because this is going to be the new podcast room. It is going to have some pretty big renovations. Well, it's not really big. We're not knocking down a wall or anything, but we're going to be painting the walls. So I just realized those colors might be 2 different colors looking at them now. That's really weird. But basically this color is not going to stay. It was beautiful and it looked really good with the previous owners. Their furniture matched it. I can't click today. Matched it really well, but it's not the vibe. We're going to keep this in here, and the walls are going to be black, and I'm going to put wallpaper on a wall, probably the wall behind me or this wall. I'm not too sure yet, but we'll figure that out. This is going to be like my cottage core room. That's why I'm a fairy today. That's as simple as the explanation is. And then I just decided to go all out with it. But it's going to be my cottage core room. So the back wall is going to have wallpaper that has little mushrooms in it, little deer, little maybe fairies, not so much. It's more of like a woodland scene. It's really beautiful. I feel like I'll be living my Shirley Barber fantasy with that kind of wallpaper, and it's not too busy, but there's so much going on. So from a distance, it just has this beautiful sort of faded woodland colors to it. And then as you get closer, you notice all these little mushrooms, these little toadstool mushrooms, little frogs, little bunny rabbits. It's really, really cute. And the first time I saw it was on Pinterest, and then I realized it's actually a really popular wallpaper. So get excited for that. I can't wait to bring y'all along on that, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. I feel like I have to do the whole spiel. Remember, we are streaming on all platforms. I don't know why I have to say this to you because you're listening on the platform. But anyway, Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. What else have I missed? I think that's about it. Anyway, let's get into today's episode officially. Now that we've gotten some updates out of the way, I am so excited to talk about this episode. To be honest, I have no problem chatting. I could talk about anything. I could literally talk about the tea in front of me, which is a cold brew of blood orange, delicious, with a ginger infusion. So good. So good for you and your skin as well, but it just tastes amazing. That's the main thing. Life is too short to eat food that doesn't make you feel good and doesn't taste good. So big bonus. But we actually have a worthwhile topic to talk about today, one that I think is going to really appeal to probably 100% of you. If you stumbled upon this podcast, or if you actively chose to listen to it, you are probably aware of the law of attraction. The law of attraction is another word, in my opinion, for manifestation. And it's the idea of being able to see yourself as an energetic being that gives off a vibrational frequency in which you can use that knowledge to lower or raise. Ideally, you're raising your vibration to align with your desired outcome. So the interesting thing about the law of attraction is I only realized literally yesterday, because I'm that honest. I shouldn't say this to myself, but I'm an honest person. I only realized yesterday that there are 3 laws in the law of attraction. And these laws were made very popular by the Hickses in the 90s, but people have been talking about this since the early 1900s, maybe earlier, it just wasn't recorded. Who knows? Maybe Plato or Socrates brought this up as well. I'm not too sure. But I definitely think that this is going to be an interesting episode. Now, as you know, I never claim to be the expert on anything. We talk about things, we hash things out, we explore things together as a team. So we are going to be exploring a thesis done by a student. Let me see where he's from again. His name is Eddie Mullins, and he was studying the Master of Science degree at the University of Wisconsin Stout. Now, I'm an Australian, I may be saying Wisconsin wrong, but it's a graduate school. And this thesis is dated back in August 2008. So 2008 was a while ago, y'all. I'm filming this in June 2023. That was like 15 years ago. And this man had some incredible, well, I'm assuming that that's his gender. It was 2008. He probably did not know anything else. But this Ladiola, Eddie Mullins, was talking about some pretty profound stuff back in 2008. He did his thesis on the law of attraction, specifically the process of the law of attraction and the 3rd law, which is the law of allowing. I found this paper incredibly insightful. I literally found it in the morning and I was obsessed with it all day. I skimmed through the whole thing, and then my mind was just flicking between a few key concepts, especially around quantum energy. Now, the interesting thing about this paper is back in 2008, sorry for spitting if you saw that, back in 2008, our boy Eddie was literally talking about things that we talk about now, how there is a undeniable correlation between metaphysiology in terms of spirituality and quantum physics. It's like the more that you explore one, the more you uncover the other. So the more that quantum physicians, if that's physicists, let's say that, physicists, the more that they explore their field of unknown variables and trying to understand things that shouldn't make sense miraculously through the lens of science, the more that they are brought back into the principles of spirituality by amazing people like Buddha himself, themselves. I'm pretty sure Buddha may not have actually defined their gender, but and other incredible spiritual practices going way back into Sanskrit times as well, which is tens of thousands of years of history. So I found it really interesting that a big part of his literature had to discuss quantum physics before they could even get into the law of attraction, especially seeing something like this covered in an academic sort of piece. I was like, what? So first of all, let's have a look. We're going to have a look at his overall abstract. So this is where he kind of breaks down, like, this is what you're going to see in my thesis. This is the main purpose of it. This is what we're covering. He said the purpose of this study on the law of attraction is to conclude the options that people have to draw into their lives what they create from their thoughts. That's the first line. Like, imagine this man presenting this to the board of his university. Like, will you give me my master's now? Like, what? The process of change your life, change your thoughts. Many people feel as if they have no choice but to live the life or career, or just simply make a decision and go with what they're handed, instead of manifesting their true heart's desire through the most powerful law in the universe, the law of attraction. Now, he goes on to say that the study will establish the 3 laws, which the Hickses also made really popular, which I didn't even fully realize the extent. So It's very similar to manifesting. The first law is the law of attraction, understanding the law of attraction, the vibration, the energies that you put out, and that you can attract with what you put out. So you have to make sure that you put out the right energy to attract the right thing. And then we have the law of creating, which is essentially being able to follow through and surrender as well as receive. So taking action, but surrendering what we can't control so that we can receive what we can't control. And then the third one is the law of allowing. Now, he goes on to say that a lot of people drop out or get stuck on the third law. So in his study, he will have a look at the third law and how or why people tend to lose traction with that, and why that seems to stuff things up, for lack of a better word, and cause their manifestations to fall through. So he, has to do, as the thesis does, explain his collection data, and he says it's like a medium collection, which means it's still at least 100 people, which is really exciting. So he goes on to say that the main form of collection is through interviews, and that it is something that is done externally. So he's not interviewing people, he's getting third parties to interview them and unbiasedly collect the results so that he can then collect the data and make sure that he hasn't tampered with the evidence and tried to push the evidence to suit his, his overall thesis. So the main first chapter in his thesis introduces us to the law of attraction. And keep in mind, this is 2008, you guys. I don't know what you were doing in 2008, but I was like 12 in 2008. I was listening to Lady Gaga. I was watching Akon. I was a kid, but I was not thinking about the law of attraction. And the law of attraction wasn't something that I heard or saw in mainstream media. It wasn't even something that I feel was had an emphasis in things like movies or TVs. I don't think it was a trend at that point. It wasn't something that now I feel is very sort of force-fed to us, and people try to make out like they have the secret and they can sell it to you for $1 million if you just sign up today and join their masterclass. There was none of that back then. So I just find that it's crazy to me that things like this can happen and can create themselves to be very insightful tools of success, and we could know nothing about it because it's not trendy. Like, how crazy is that? We could have had the opportunity to do these things way, way sooner. And I could be talking to people who were living very different lives in 2008. Maybe you were privy to this information and you were actively manifesting way back then. But it's just shocking to me that he had it all figured out back then. And he was doing this study with regular people. He wasn't doing it with psychologists or these physicists or people who had PhDs. He was doing it with everyday people, and he saw huge results. So he goes on to explain that the law of attraction is the theory behind it is we create our own reality. We create both the things that we want and we don't want in our lives, creating a process of not worrying about how that desire will show up in your life is a big part of the law of attraction, which is something that the Hickses say as well. So when the worry or concern becomes the main focus, this stops the creating and allowing process. This is called a vibration. So creating a vibration of worry or concern on how what you are asking for will show up is really saying that you don't deserve what you are declaring, or you don't believe that it will show up. When our beliefs are limited, we attract limited desires and compromise the well-being of our lives. So on the flip side, when we believe that anything is possible, and with focus and belief, drawing anything into our life is possible. So the thing is, with what he's saying, he's quoting a million different people because it is a thesis, which I found really exciting. These are recent quotes too. So the last Hicks quote was from 2006. Then we have Lossier from 2006 as well, and Mera from 2008. So to manifest is to bring something into existence, he says. The language of the law of attraction says that we manifest based on our thoughts and belief systems. So when people put manifestation focus on the lack of, they create less of a compassionate reality of what they want. This is all stuff that a lot of us know, but I do need to explain it again to help kind of tie into what I want to talk about next. So in the law of attraction, there are 3 laws to meeting the process. Sorry. So law number 1, the law of attraction. You have to understand all 3 laws in order for this process to work. You have to understand the law of attracting before you move on to the law of creating, which is law number 2, and then allowing, which is law number 3. So law number 3 is where most people lose their vibrational journey to attract what they are wanting most in life. This is where they can create a vibration with the universe that states, I don't deserve, or I'm not worthy of what I want. This brings focus on the lack, and therefore that is what we will manifest. So let's move forward. I do just want to quickly find where he explains the 3 laws specifically, and then we'll talk about the exciting part of this thesis, the part where he correlates quantum theories, quantum physics to spirituality and this spiritual concept. So I just want to have a look and find where he explains in his own words the 3 laws, because he does paraphrase from Hicks and Nelson, and he does explain. I'm going to put a link to this in the caption or description box as well, sweet. So if you want to read through it and you want to double check his sources, do that. I will not explain all of them. I'm only really talking about the ones that I recognize, which is obviously Abraham Hicks, and a few other last names that do pop up like Nelson. So there are a few different things that he wants us to understand in terms of the definition of term side. So he will use the words divine matrix, which is a field of energy that provides the container, as well as a bridge and a mirror for everything that happens between the world within us and the world outside of our bodies. He also uses vibrational alignment. Now we know what that is, but in his terms, he says making conscious body connection with the universal energy. The law of attraction, aligning your energy and vibration with the universe to draw in what is desired, and obviously manifestation, which is visualizing what is desired into reality. Let me see where he discusses each of the laws. It's mostly the last 2 that I want to clarify for you as well, because I feel like most of us know what the law of attraction is, but we need to be able to see what he says. Okay, I found it. I've just had a quick water break as well. So, on page 13 of his thesis, which is technically page 16 if you're reading it as a PDF file, Mullen states that the law of attraction is the most powerful law in the universe, since it's the first law in the law of attraction process. So the law of attraction says that which is like unto itself is drawn. That's so Abraham Hicks. So we know that. Let's move forward and have a look at the next one. So the law of creating. So the universe supports what is asked and created. And this process is law number 2, the law of creating. So basically Hicks describes it as saying I have so much debt will only bring on more debt, because the energy, emotion, and thought are focusing on the experience of having debt. To best utilize the law of attraction using the second law, there must be intention to focus on positive thought. The law of creating is about focusing on creating more positive energy thoughts for emotions to be applied to. So by forcing yourself, and this isn't something that is unnatural to psychology either, by actively seeking neuro pathways that are more positive, or thoughts that are more positive, more helpful, more hopeful, you are allowing the emotions to follow and creating space for your emotions to align as well. This process has to become a forced habit, and it is possible to have awareness when negative thoughts cross into, what she's trying to say is, and what I'm having a really horrible time in paraphrasing is, when you do have those negative thoughts, you have to create that awareness to be able to switch them into positive thoughts. So this is something that people can get really good at, because it does become a habit. It's very difficult in the beginning. It depends on where you're starting from. Some people are starting from very low vibrations, and it's very hard to get out of that habit of just jumping to the most negative conclusion. And we're using this in terms of energetic vibrations too, by the way. We're not trying to label people as negative. We're not trying to label people as positive. We're talking about positive thoughts as positive vibrations, as you would with a battery. There's a positive and there's a negative side. So the negative repels, the positive attracts. The positive thoughts and creating positive thoughts attracts positive thoughts. The negative thoughts and creating negative thoughts repels positive thoughts. So most humans have anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 negative thoughts a day. This process created from the ego mind, the fearful part of the mind, according to Tolle. So when you shift from a negative ego mind to positive thoughts, it helps that thought become an intention, a new point of attraction to focus upon. So this creates a new emotion and a new energy. The idea behind this is that your thoughts are creating space for your actions to follow. Your intentions are setting the way for the action to follow. So up to this point, in the law of attraction, you must ask for what is desired, followed by feeling to create your experience of attracting and creating. So to use this in a practical context, let's say we're trying to manifest, I'm going to talk about my current manifestation, a Tesla. Let's say we're manifesting a Tesla, and I'm saying, listen, Tesla cars are very rare in my little town in Australia, even though they are getting a little bit more popular. The likeliness of me being able to have a Tesla here is extremely rare. It's never going to happen. I don't believe it. I could try as hard as I want, but I just have a feeling the universe doesn't want this for me. I'm literally telling the universe, don't give this to me. Don't do it. I'm not ready. I don't want it. I don't deserve it. And that's what we saw with the first law. The second law is about recognizing, oh shit, that was a negative thought. That's not going to work. I'm repelling exactly what I want. Okay, so now I have to actively switch it. I deserve a Tesla. That's the best thing you could say first, because you're setting the intention, and then your actions are likely to follow. New emotions arise when you say that too. Oh my God, I deserve a Tesla. Why shouldn't I have a Tesla? It's not that uncommon. Actually, it's a very achievable goal, and it's something that I can definitely give myself. So now that I'm stirring these new emotions of optimism, curiosity, and even desire, I'm starting to have more positive thoughts. Well, wait a minute. If I can have a Tesla, maybe I can have a Tesla sooner than what I think. I deserve a Tesla. This can happen, that can happen. The positivity is infectious, in my opinion, but I've spent a lot of time working on my mindset as well. So it's something that will be a process that differs for each and every one of you, but the second law is a very important law, because you, I would argue, can't continue with a manifestation until you are in control of your reality. And that is in creating the thoughts that you have and in controlling the thoughts that you have as well. But anyway, let's have a look at what they say about the third law now. So a big example that they like to use is soulmates, and being able to align your energy with a suitable partner, which is honestly probably one of the most common topics in my readings as well. One of the main things that a lot of you guys want to see is love, and being able to energetically attract somebody that you're compatible with, somebody that you deserve, somebody that let's not just say you, because likewise, somebody that we have been wanting based off of what we feel we deserve. And personally, I will be the first to put my hand up and say I have sabotaged that manifestation by lowering my vibration and allowing lesser in, because I either at times thought I was unworthy, or I at times thought this is taking way too long and I can't allow the universe to give this to me anymore, because either I clearly don't deserve it, the universe doesn't care about me, or at this point it's just not going to happen for me like it has for others. That's so negative. I haven't thought like that in a while, but just as an example. So the law of allowing, according to Mullins and his long list of credits, is the most difficult law in the law of attraction. The law is simply the absence of negative thoughts or vibrations, along with no doubt for what is being attracted. Simple, right? No negative thoughts or vibrations, no doubt about what you are attracting. So simple. All doubt must be removed from the belief surrounding what is being attracted. Removing the doubt is called allowing. The rate of speed at which the law of attraction manifests the desire is directly affected by how much is just simply allowed. Wow, let's read that again. The rate of speed at which the law of attraction manifests the experience of desire is directly affected by how much is just simply allowed. There are only two types of emotions used in the law of attraction: good emotion and bad emotions that create and allow the experience. This is according to Hicks. I don't want to read all of this, so I'll just kind of summarize, but he goes on to reference a study that Duke University did, in which they actually checked to see how the body and mind reacts to negative thoughts. And they basically found out that your heart rate goes up when you have a negative thought or a stressful thought, and you end up putting a lot more of an impact on your body, your vessel. Forcing or worrying is something that is only going to slow down the process, he says. And this comes from knowing that your vessel becomes impacted by those emotions. So you may need to slow down because you need to take better care of your vessel. We know that as well from a physiological point of view. Stress can literally shorten your lifespan. I can't even use a reference because I feel like that is just a known fact. People can die from stress. So he goes on to say that stress and bad emotions are things that can not only physically harm you, but absolutely slow down the process of attraction. So on top of that, he says that allowing the choice of empowering or disempowering yourself mentally is where you can limit or speed up the process. And that is ultimately what the law of allowing is. So unfortunately, the law sounds really simple, but it is incredibly complex because a lot of us are conditioned from when we are very young, or through our experiences, through our social structures, through our education process, through our upbringing, which is a part of our education process, in my opinion. The first 11 years of your life are the most important, according to a lot of psychologists. We are conditioned to use our experiences as safety nets of what to expect next. So if you've had an upbringing that was very traumatic and filled with a lot of, as they say, bad emotions, experiences, and triggers, this could be a very difficult process for you, and it could take a lot of time, and you may need other helpful tools to help get in control of your thoughts. The third law could be incredibly easy for people that have had fairly stable, consistent, supportive, and open upbringings, to the point where believing that anything is possible was conditioned from a young age. So it's something that I personally had a lot of trouble with. I could understand the logic, I could understand the theory, but I had to understand how I was being influenced to not allow what I deserve and what I want to come into fruition. And sometimes that's an external thing. Remember, we talked about recently in one of my episodes, having people in your life who form these rocks that can, of external expectations, that can impact our manifestations, because then what we want needs to ricochet off of what their expectations of us are. So sometimes that can limit our abilities to move forward as well. And I've been very lucky in most of my adult life, at least in terms of my successful part of my adult life, to have to really only worry about myself. I think that these things really do change when you have constant people in your life who you love and depend on, to be able to ricochet this off of as well. But she goes on to say, or Eddie and the Hickses go on to say, that a helpful part of this process of the law of allowing, the third law of attraction, is to use something called anchoring. So your belief system is created, or the belief system that is created can be the breakthrough for life success or the downfall that ends what is most desired. Anchoring is used to create a strong or limited belief, whether one will be success in the third law of allowing. Why do they do that? whether one will be success in the third law of allowing. English is so weird. That sounded like it was leading on to something else, but it wasn't. I'm like, what? Wouldn't you just say a strong limited belief? One will be success. Anyway, anchoring is the process by which any representation, internal or external, gets connected to and triggers a subsequent string of representation and response. So anchors can be naturally occurring or deliberately set up. This is actually Tony Robbins. This is from one of his seminars back in the 90s. So an example of anchoring would be the tone of voice that someone uses, or an event that has happened in the past that is not released or redefined in a person's belief system. The past does not have to equal the future, but in many cases, the limited belief in success keeps us stuck in the past and repeating what has already been done. So sometimes this is what helps us propel forward, and this can be also a helpful tool in making sure that we aren't staying stuck. But sometimes we have these subconscious anchors based off of key events that happen to us that become the kind of, for lack of a better word, I wouldn't use the process of anchor. I would almost use like a theme or a template. And when you start to recognize certain things happening again, you copy and paste that template into that situation and you go, this is exactly how it's going to happen. I've been through this before. This is what's going to happen, for better or worse. And it could be a negative thing. It could be like, hey man, I've seen this before. You're just going to hurt me. So I'm going to push you away now because I have a fear of abandonment that I haven't addressed. Or it could be a positive thing of, oh my God, I've seen this before. This is the part where I win. This is the part where they pull my number and I've won bingo. Like it could be a positive or a negative thing in terms of their language. It feels really weird to say positive and negative because I feel like a lot of what we do now with neo-spirituality is to try to remove those labels so that it's less harsh, but it's also a beautiful way of creating that juxtaposition between where you want to go versus what you have to overcome. So anchoring can be something that you can use helpfully. So you could say, I have trauma around abandonment, but when I recognize myself pushing people away, I'm going to anchor myself in the belief that I deserve to be loved and that I create space in my life for people who love me. So you could use that actually in your benefit, even though it's something that feels like it's been geared against you or set up to kind of be geared against you. Anyway, so those are the 3 laws of attraction, which, to be honest, you could go into more depth. This thesis is 26 pages long. It's very easy to read because it's a thesis. It's all double spaced and big breaks. So it could have been condensed into probably 7 pages of Word documents. It's only so big because of all the extra titles, and they have to break it up so that it's easy to read and all the references. It's a very quick read. So if you want to learn more about the law of attraction, we will have a look at the outcome of his, that's so rude, isn't it? I just skipped to the end. Let's just skip to the end and see what happened in his study. So based on the research that was conducted, this is why people are not having success with the law of allowing. Allowing of one is also the allowing of another without judgment. When allowing can just simply be, a vibration is made with the universe with what is being desired most. Therefore, that is what is being attracted to you, and that is the law of attraction. You can tell that Hicks said that because it's just so confusing. There's so many words for what it actually is. So people have limited belief about what they can or can't have, according to Robbins. Often people get caught up in their everyday lives of living without change, therefore conditioning our belief system to think that we have no control over what changes we make in our lives. We continue to create the story that we have experienced in our lives of not being success. The story plays over and over again. The story of I don't deserve what I'm asking for, and my limited belief of what has happened in the past is going to happen again. And also self-worth, they say, is a major area. So according to his study, a lot of it is behavioral, a lot of it is environmental in terms of nature, what you're nurtured in, the environment that you're nurtured in. A lot of it is based off of your childhood experiences and how you choose to see your experiences, whether you see it as a coffin in which this is something that is going to continue to repeat until the day I die and it can't change, or whether you choose to see it as a chance to be more accountable and more aware of the fact that this is a pattern and I got to break it, and I got to be very active and quick to catch myself and start creating some positive thoughts. His study concluded that the third law is one of the easiest, but also the trickiest because of our society, because of the fact that people get really caught up in how we are just doing the same thing different day, routines that show us that change is very difficult. Unless change happens to us, it doesn't seem to happen for us. And he also goes on to say that the third law, in theory, was very easy in times when you didn't have so much structure around you. So I personally believe that if this law were introduced into a community setting where there was like community living and a community environment of which like everyone just has a role to play, but there's also that feeling of responsibility and accountability of if you don't do that, then this will happen and that will happen, and you see the cause and effect, it would be a lot easier to obey that third law of allowing, because you have that recognition of, well, I need to do this or it's not going to happen type of thing. But in our society, we are almost cogs in a great machine. So if you have one of those matrix jobs where you go to work and you do this and you never really see how far your work goes, or you never truly see how big the impact is and how helpful your role is, you start to lose that disconnect between what you do is powerful, and you start to think of yourself as another cog in the machine and as somebody who doesn't have a huge impact. So why would your thoughts matter? So why would something like this be helpful for you? I think it's very interesting, and it's something that unfortunately was probably done subconsciously at a more simpler time in our societal state. Like, I could imagine even my ancestors 200 years ago in a village being very good at the law of attraction, because there was that accountability on them every day. If I don't do this, it's not going to happen. So you have to do it. You have to get up at 6 a.m. and cut wood. You have to make sure that you have enough food for the week. You have to make sure that you cook that food right now, or it's going to be spoiled and that'll be a waste of life. You have to make sure that you're in control of your mind, or it's not going to get done. It's not going to happen. So it's very easy to kind of get consumed by negativity when you're stuck in a process of simulated change, when these big things just seem to be happening to you and not for you. But anyway, now that we've talked about the 3 laws and this study, I want to go back and I want to talk to you about what I found on quantum energy, because this is what really made me happy. So the thing that kind of stood out for me was how he specifically talks about the difference between physics, which is Newton, and Newton, for example, with gravity, and what we know about electrons, and the fact that science was created in those days to make sure that everything makes sense. There is a law for everything. There is an equation for everything. If one planet hits another, we can predict the projection of that bounce, and how that will sort of play out in terms of, we could calculate, okay, the debris is going to go in this direction. But quantum physics is not about that at all. It's more about trying to understand the anomalies, trying to understand the miracles. And this also brought a lot of weird lights onto, because I didn't know this about quantum energy and quantum particles, but it also shed a lot more light on previous studies that I had looked at when it comes to trying to understand molecules and how light particles react and work. And this was in very rudimentary experiments back in the, oh my God, I don't even want to say it because I feel like I'll be really wrong. I have a feeling it was the 90s, but I could be very wrong about that. Anyway, without getting crazier and more off track, let me share what I read that just blew my mind, because I'm sure if you've been interested up until this point, This is going to blow your mind. So first of all, he talks about how with physics, when it comes to vibrations, if atoms are aligned, they create a motive force. So all pulled together in the same direction, in the same way as metals can get magnetized by aligning their poles in the same direction. So the creation of positive and negative poles is a fact of nature and science, he says. Now, he also goes on to say that there's criticism that the law of attraction is a made-up New Age name, but in reality, it's the law of nature, that every atom in and around the human body is in constant response. This is a direct relationship between our energy, our conscious thoughts, and the world of matter around us. There is a direct connection to the thought and feeling of what is desired when using the law of attraction. Okay. I keep getting distracted because there's so much here. So much. All right. So quantum physics plays a large part in research in the process of how the law of attraction works. Quantum physics is simply a study that studies and explains how everything in our world comes to existence, starting from the physical aspect of the events and conditions and circumstances of everything in the universe, breaking them down into their most basic form, attempting to discover the source from where they are derived from. So that's the thing, that's the difference. Quantum physics is simply the science that studies and explains how everything in the world comes into existence, breaking it down to its most basic form and attempting to discover the source with a capital S, which I thought was interesting, from where they are derived from. Okay, so to understand quantum physics, you have to understand quantum energy and quantum particles. So we're looking at quantum energy first. This is the first dot point that just blew my mind. Quantum energy can exist in two very different forms, as visible particles or invisible waves. The energy is still there either way, just making itself known in different forms. How, I want to swear, fucking crazy is that? Quantum energy can be invisible or visible. It's still there. It's just making itself known in different forms. A quantum particle can be in one place only, two places at once, or even many places simultaneously. The interesting things, however, is that no matter how far apart these locations appear to be physically, the particle acts as if it's still connected. Chills. Let that sink in. The third theory, the third dot point that helps us understand quantum physics explains that quantum particles can communicate with themselves at different points in time. They're not limited by the concepts of past, present, and future. To a quantum particle, then is now, and there is here. So how crazy? Because first of all, that really aligns with a lot of spiritual practices and beliefs, and that completely aligns with the law of attraction and manifestation. And a helpful tool, which some people create as a rule, that you can use when doing the law of attraction or manifesting, is visualization and imagining yourself there already, seeing yourself in your desired outcome or with your desired experience. And according to quantum energy, that is something that happens every single day, every single second in our universe. Quantum energy is the understanding that there are particles that are not bound or restricted by concepts like time. Time is a construct that we seemingly came up with to help us understand events and help sequence key moments in history so that we could have a better understanding of what happened and when it did. But quantum energy doesn't operate with those confinements. Quantum energy sees the past, the present, and the future as all happening at once. And quantum particles can be connected and communicate to each other while also existing in physically different locations. that to me is very similar to what we know as the collective energy, being able to tap into what each other is experiencing, feeling, and knowing based off of what physics has found out is quantum energy. And then lastly, the idea of visible or invisible waves. The idea that we can visibly see a quantum particle while also feel the invisible particle. If that isn't the spiritual world, I don't know what is. Is that what happens to us when we pass? Do we become invisible waves of quantum energy until we are materialized into a visible particle? Is that what happens with deja vu in terms of being in two places at once? Are we tapping into a string theory, a different dimension, a different universe? Is that what our premonitions are? Is that what us being able to understand that choices have actions and every action has a reaction, every reaction has an action? I just think that a lot of what they've discovered with quantum physics seems to just pull right back to rudimentary spirituality and beliefs that were cultivated tens of thousands of years ago. And here we have in 2008 a document talking about how the law of attraction and the workings and the knowings of the universe are basically the laws of nature. And this is how everything is created and made. And he's referencing materials that go back to 1906 and the 1990s. Like, we had so many moments in history to be more energetically aware, energetically aligned, and ultimately more tapped in to what is happening around us. And instead, we've just created more blocks, more limits, and more boundaries, almost trying to make it more difficult to be our true selves. It's like we've created something that's almost against our nature. And I think that what I love most about my spiritual practices, my beliefs, is right now it just feels like it's my nature. I don't have to try. I don't have to force it. It doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like something that's hard to do. It was only ever hard when I had to do it with the confines that I had created for myself in terms of while also working my matrix job. Then it became hard to tune into my vessel because I didn't have time to. Then it became hard to journal because I didn't have time to. This is insane to me because we know all of this and yet we still create constructs of limitations and things that stop us from being able to tap into this. I think a person's biggest excuse for anything in their life is, I just don't have time to do that. And we know based off of quantum theories that time is a construct. It does not exist. And most of the universe knows this. We're probably one of the only beings, like I would argue even our pets don't believe in time. They just know, well, when the sun rises, it's time to look for food, or it's time to sleep, or it's time to, seek shade or water. I just think that it's very interesting that we call ourselves the most advanced beings and the most advanced organisms and the prime predators of this world, and we really are the least in tune with what everybody else is doing. So I think that a lot can be gained from papers like this, and a lot can be learned from being able to tap into these kinds of theories and understanding these kinds of theories. I'm a huge fan of science, and that's why I had to limit my attachment to other sorts of structures. That's why I personally have taken a break from my religion and my belief in religions, because I'm very attracted to this kind of stuff and being able to tap into something that apparently every other organism is just doing based on their primary nature, and something that we have been conditioned to forget. So I think I'm just going to leave it there, sweet soul. If you have anything to add, please comment down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, reach out on the Spirit Talks feedbacks form. It will be in the description or in the caption box of wherever you're watching this. Why am I got a lisp all of a sudden? It's not a lisp. It's almost like a Sean Connery thing. But anyway, Please reach out if you have anything to add, or if there's any questions that you have, if you have any feedback in general. I found this incredibly interesting. I'm going to link this paper down below, but as always, we are not experts on this podcast. This is a discussion, so keep the conversation going. Do your own research. Look into what we have spoken about today. I highly recommend that you have a look at quantum theory, quantum physics, quantum energies, quantum particles, and do have a look at the law of attraction, the 3 laws, if you need to brush up on your manifestation and just make sure that you are working with the universe to create the best possible outcome. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, for listening today. It's been a pleasure to do this episode. I hope you got just excited about this as I did. I wish we could sit down and have a proper conversation about it, but until our next episode, I will leave you with definitely a lot to talk about with your friends and family, your community, hopefully a lot to reflect on for yourself. I wish you all the best. I hope this video found you when you're safe and well. Look after your beautiful self, and I'll connect with you in another video. Bye.